Hi there, Aaron Walter here. If you're hearing this, you're not currently on our premium subscriber feed. Design Better premium subscribers enjoy weekly episodes, 4 episodes per month in total, rather than 2, all ad-free, and invitations to our monthly AMAs with the smartest folks in design and tech. You'll hear a preview of this episode, but if you'd like to hear the full conversation, please consider becoming a premium subscriber at designbetterpodcast.com/subscribe. It's just $7 a month, and it supports not only your personal growth, it also makes our work at Design Better possible. The podcast is available to everyone through our scholarship program. If you can't afford a subscription, email us at subscriptions@thecuriositydepartment.com, and we'll help you out.
Once you get into a position like production designer, it does become kind of hard to continue producing personal work. And you exercise many more muscles, I think, in leadership positions, because it's not just the art making anymore. It's a lot of communication and trying to understand the personalities that you're working with. It's kind of the hospitality business too, you know? You're always trying to be a good, hospitable artist to the people you're working for and help them workshop ideas.
One of the great things about being a dad is getting to watch your favorite movies again with your kids and experience them through a new point of view, and also watch new films together and see how things like animation evolve and create new ways of telling stories. And one of the best examples of this from the past decade is Spiderman, Into the Spider-Verse, which used innovative techniques to pay tribute to the comic book origins of the stories, but add new depth and excitement without feeling forced. Aarron and I both love watching the original and the sequel with our kids, so you can imagine how excited we were to chat with Yashar Kassai, production designer of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, artist on The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and more. We learned about the tools he uses, how he thinks about developing a fresh look for a familiar franchise, and what the future of visual storytelling might look like. This is Design Better, where we explore creativity at the intersection of design and technology. I'm Eli Woolery.
We'll return to the conversation after this quick break. Eli and I are big fans of learning from other creative disciplines. That's why we want to recommend another podcast for you. It's called On Set With. It's a podcast from HGTV and Max, and it takes you behind the scenes of some of the most iconic sets from the shows that changed TV history. We love how this show takes you into the creative minds who designed the sets for Friends, True Detective Season 1, I loved it, The Gilded Age, Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, White Lotus, Girls, Succession, and more. Doesn't that sound fascinating? You get to hear from the production designers, set decorators, and visual collaborators who brought these famous locations to life. It was fascinating to hear that on True Detective Season 1, the designers spent almost a year hoarding and sourcing set decor, which set the tone for that series. And from the Gilded Age set designers on how their intense research of late 1800s interiors led writers of the show to create a whole new character for the series. You can listen to On Set With on Max or wherever you get podcasts. It's time for a coffee break, and we're here with our pal, Will Schertz from Methodical Coffee, co-founder and master roaster. Will, so if we're thinking about different ways to brew coffee, what should we think about? How could we do this? And what are the best ways to brew coffee?
Yes. Okay. So you got your whole beans, you got your coffee brewer. There are so many ways to brew coffee easily. You know, first of all, you have to make sure you have good coffee. Shameless little plug that if you go to methodicalcoffee.com, we have a vast array of offerings that you could choose from. But then you got your whole bean coffee, and then now you have to decide, do you want filter coffee, manual brew, or espresso? If you're going to brew coffee by hand, or if you're going to put coffee in a coffee pot, my general ratio is a 16-to-1 ratio. 16 parts water, 1 part coffee. The way that you would do that really quickly is if you have a gram scale, that's fantastic, because then weigh out 20 grams of coffee, multiply that by 16, and that's the amount of water that you need to pour over that coffee to have a even 16-to-1 ratio for your coffee. If you have an espresso maker at home, my favorite recipe for espresso is just a classic 2-to-1 ratio. And I try to get my extraction between 25 and 35 seconds. So however much coffee you're putting in that portafilter, pull double the amount of espresso out and try to do that in 25 or 35 seconds. But we have plenty of videos and tutorials on our website about how to brew coffee, what kind of equipment you're using and what specs you want to be looking out for. If you go to methodicalcoffee.com and look at our blog, it's in the learning section of the site. But essentially, gotta have your coffee beans, gotta have a coffee grinder and a brewing vessel. And then after that, for brewed coffee, focus on that 16-to-1 ratio with a brew time, I would say roughly about 4 minutes. And for espresso, focus on that 2-to-1 ratio and extraction time of 25 to 35 seconds. I keep that recipe as I brew coffee. And for me, the easiest way to adjust for flavor is just by slightly adjusting your grind size on your coffee grinder and seeing what the result is. And it's kind of fun to learn how to dial in on your coffee grinder. Dialing in is also another tutorial that we have on our website.
Fantastic. Will, that's great. Methodicalcoffee.com to learn more about methodical coffees, learn more about brewing, and Will has wonderful brewing guides up there. Learn more about methodical coffee and get some tips on how to brew the best cup of coffee at methodicalcoffee.com. And now, back to the show.
Yashar Kassai, welcome to the Design Better podcast.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Aaron and I are very excited to have you. To give a little background, I'm speaking for Aaron here, but he can correct me if I'm wrong. Spider-Verse was like my favorite animated movie of the last 2 decades, probably. I just loved it. I took my son to see it. He loved it. And it was just such a fresh kind of like feel and look without feeling like forced. It was amazing. Love the story, love the artwork. And so we'll get to that. But before we get there, we want to learn more about you, and we'll get to your role in the movies too. But talk to us about your childhood. Where'd you grow up? Were you into comics? What did that look like?
I grew up in Texas. I was born in a small town called Denton, and then I quickly moved into and around the city of Dallas. I watched a lot of Disney cartoons growing up, and I was haunted by Monstro the whale from the original Pinocchio film. They go into the belly of this whale, they have to escape it and get back to land from this whale. And as a child, like when you're single digits, you're like 5 watching this whale Monstro he's kind of drawn like a whale, but he's just a giant demon. And he's chasing a little boy and his father. And I remember being so taken by that I felt, I think for the first time in my life, according to parents, picked up a pen, got paper. It was printing paper with double perforated sides, green, white, late 80s printer paper. And I started drawing this whale. And I kept drawing it over and over again. I couldn't stop. And I think it was the first time in my life I actually felt compelled to be creative in some way. So Disney had a huge influence. Not just that, but like a lot of the speculative fiction stuff. I was watching Mars and Beyond, Man of the Moon, back when Disney was curious about the universe, and they would actually dedicate a team of animators to explore the universe. And it was so silly. And like there was, loose facts in there, but it was just a good time to see artists wonder what life was like on Mars and if it could exist on the moon. So a steady diet of that, kept drawing pretty consistently until high school, ditched drawing in high school. I was like, I'm going to wrestle. That's all I care about now. For 4 years, just neglected art completely and thought I was going to go become this elite college wrestler. Was not talented enough to do that. Pretty rude awakening by senior year. Got back to drawing, came back to it. And then halfway through college, completely ignorant of the industry that I'm in right now, really not even helping myself, not trying, stumbled across the artwork of Craig Mullins, who is considered to be the godfather of digital painting, which he did a lot of concept art for games and movies. And when I saw his images, I just thought this is a really interesting Photoshop filter that he's putting over photographs. Very clever. Only to realize that he is a master painter, as good as any master oil painter in history, creating these digital images in Photoshop on a computer with a stylus tablet. I saw him do that, and I knew that I had to try and do the same. So immediately changed my direction from being a web designer to pursuing concept art and wanting to ideate visually with a team of people on games or movies or TV, whatever it was going to be. I just wanted to draw like that and come up with ideas for fantasy and science fiction. And that's what led me to where I'm at today.
Did you have a support structure around you? I'm curious, your story of growing up in Texas. I grew up in the Midwest, and I too was fascinated by Disney and drawing Disney things. And growing up in Iowa, anyone who's into art or drawing, it's a little weird, It's just like there's not really a spot for it. Did you get support from your parents, from your friends as you got into college? Did you have people around you that got what you were trying to do?
Every now and then, like I relate to that a lot. Every now and then someone would be like, so what are you going to do with that? Like, yeah, you draw a lot, but like, what are you going to do after school with that? But I'm probably one of the luckiest human beings on earth. It just sounds like a Lou Gehrig speech or something. But seriously, like there was never a point in my life where I didn't have 1 to 5 people telling me, hey, you're talented. Hey, you got something going for you. Hey, you should keep doing this. Don't stop doing this. You're good at it. So that came from parents. It came from coaches in school. It came from professors in college. And it came from friends. And eventually, probably most meaningfully, it came from, industry professionals who would say like, hey, you have a shot at this. You should try.
I similarly had a wrestling career, but probably much shorter than yours, because junior year, I ended up breaking my wrist in a match. I decided like, maybe this isn't for me. I was also really into illustration drawings. Like if I can't use my wrists anymore, I don't know if that's going to be great for my own hopes and careers. But yeah, I'm curious. So you got to college, you found this kind of path into digital art. And then what were the steps that it took you to get into kind of your current role as a production designer?
It's a little embarrassing because like I mentioned before, there was a time where I wasn't helping myself. I don't know what it was, fear or something, fear of failure. But I was working at the equivalent of a GNC, like a vitamin shop where you sell protein powder and vitamins and supplements. And my manager, this wonderful person named Christy, 2 clients from a local studio came in. They were just shopping for normal supplement, vitamin stuff. She caught wind that they are clients of a studio called Real FX in Dallas. It's the only animation studio there. Another one called DNA had closed down a little while ago. And then she asked them, do you have a phone number for that place? And she was looking out for me. She had seen me draw and was, again, one of those people who said like, hey, you're good at that. You should do something with that. And she gave me that number. And I used that phone number to call up Real FX studios. And I called them up like I was applying at an Office Max or like a Subway or something. Like I was ignorant to the steps it took to get an internship or an apprenticeship at a studio like that. But they didn't really have a program like that. So they just said, you can come to the studio and you can sit at one of these desks and maybe you can scan drawings and you can talk to some people and observe people and what they do. Real FX had a really talented group of commercial artists. It was also pursuing CG animation. So every department from lighting to texturing to modeling, which we can get into later. But I sat there for 3 months hoping that someone would speak to me or that they would let me scan their drawings. And I remember offering that service up and being turned down. Like people didn't trust me to scan a drawing. And eventually...
If you'd like to continue listening to this conversation, you'll need to subscribe at designbetterpodcast.com/subscribe. Once you do, you'll get access to every full-length episode, all ad-free, monthly AMAs with inspiring people in design and tech, and recordings of all our past AMAs. The podcast is available to everyone through our scholarship program. If you can't afford a subscription, just email us at subscriptions@thecuriositydepartment.com and we'll help you out. Your support makes design better possible. Invest in yourself and the design community by subscribing at designbetterpodcast.com.